Okay, I have a confession to make. Last night, I fell into a rabbit hole, and not a productive one. I was doom scrolling through the spiritual side of social media. You know the algorithm I'm talking about. And I swear, every third video was about twin
All
flames.
the algorithm knows, it is relentless.
It is, and the narrative is always so high stakes. It's cinematic. You have people staring into the camera, there's this intense music, and they're telling you that there is one specific person in the universe who shares your soul,
hmm
and that you are destined to meet them, and it will be explosive, and if you aren't with them, you're basically, living a half-life.
It's the ultimate romantic hook. I mean, it combines destiny, magic, and that deep primal fear we all have of being alone.
Totally.
It tells you that you aren't just looking for a date or a partner, you're looking for the missing piece of your own existence.
Right, which is just a lot of pressure for a Tuesday. But here is the pivot, and why we're talking about this today. We are doing a deep dive into how to find that one person. We are looking at a stack of research and a specific text called the Twin Flame Collective, Integration and Inner Wholeness.
Ah,
And this material argues that everything I saw on TikTok last night, the romance, the chasing, the obsession, is actually missing the point entirely.
it's a massive reframe. The source material suggests that twin flame energy isn't really about a person at all.
At all.
No, it's about a process.
Mm-hmm.
It's a specific developmental phase that, a huge chunk of the collective seems to be going through right now.
Which honestly is such a relief. Because if it's a process, I can manage that. I can do a process. If it's a magical destiny I have to hunt down in a coffee shop, that's stressful.
Right.
So the mission for this deep dive is to kind of strip away the woo-woo layers. We want to figure out, is this a literal soul phenomenon? Is it just a fancy word for trauma bonding? And most importantly, how do you survive these intense feelings without, losing your mind?
Or your bank account, considering how many psychics are selling twin flame readings out there.
Seriously. So let's get into the source material. The authors define this twin flame collective energy not as a search for a partner, but as a systemic collapse. That sounds ominous.
It does sound intense, but think of it like a computer operating system. You can't run new high-powered software on Windows 95. The source argues that this energy is essentially a forced upgrade. It's a period where your old identity, your old mechanisms for safety, and especially your old beliefs about love just start to crash.
So when people say, I met this person and my whole world fell apart, the source is basically saying, good, it was supposed to.
In a way, yes. The argument is that the person who triggered this, they aren't the destination. They are just the catalyst. They are the enter key that started the software update. But because the feelings are so tied to that person, we fixate on them rather than the upgrade happening inside us.
That's the collective part of the title, right? It's not just you having a bad breakup. It's a shared human pattern.
That's the key. The text really emphasizes that this is happening largely because we are collectively shifting how we view relationships. We're moving from, say, transactional relationships.
I need you to pay the bills and keep me safe.
Exactly, to transformational relationships. We want partners who help us grow. But growth is painful. So this twin flame label is essentially the vocabulary we're using to describe the growing pains of a new kind of love.
I like that. It treats the concept as a symbolic language rather than some literal rule book. But we have to talk about what this actually feels like because the source outlines 4 core themes of the experience. And looking at this list, I think a lot of listeners are going to recognize themselves here, even if they think crystals and astrology are nonsense.
Oh, I think you're right. The first theme is intense emotional activation. And we aren't just talking about butterflies in the stomach.
No, the text describes it more like being peeled, like an onion.
That's a visceral way to put it. That's accurate. The source explains that this interaction tends to bypass your usual defenses. You meet someone, and suddenly, fears you thought you dealt with 10 years ago, fear of abandonment, fear of not being good enough, fear of being engulfed, they all just come rushing back to the surface.
And the thing we all do is we blame the other person. I was fine until I met you, therefore you are doing this to me.
That is the critical distinction the author makes. They call it the causality fallacy. The other person isn't causing the wound, they are revealing it. Imagine you have a deep bruise on your arm, but you've been wearing a big coat so you forgot it was there. This person bumps into you. It hurts like hell. But they didn't create the bruise. They just hit the spot that was already tender.
That is so annoying. It's empowering, I guess, because it means I can fix it, but it's also annoying because I really want to just blame the guy who didn't text me back.
Right.
It feels so much better to be the victim.
It takes all the fun out of righteous indignation, doesn't it? But realizing the bruise was already there is the only way to heal it. And that leads directly to the second theme, which I think is the most misunderstood: mirror dynamics.
Yeah, I always thought mirror meant we're the same, like, oh, we both have a dark sense of humor, or we both had lonely childhoods.
That's the surface level. But the source digs into the actual mechanics of it. The mirror isn't about personality traits, it's about your nervous system. When you are triggered by this person, your body is mirroring back to you your own unmet needs.
Okay, can we make that concrete? Because nervous system mirroring sounds a bit abstract. What does that actually look like?
Sure. Let's say this twin flame person is emotionally unavailable. They pull away. You instantly go into panic mode, obsessively checking your phone, feeling unsafe, unable to focus on work. The mirror isn't showing you that they're cold. The mirror is showing you that you lack self-soothing skills. It's revealing that your entire sense of safety is externalized.
Ooh, okay. So the mirror is basically saying, hey, look at how much power you've given away.
Spot on. It's showing you the holes in your own self-concept. It's like a projector. You're yelling at the screen because you don't like the movie, but the film is actually running inside your own head. The other person is just the screen.
That's a game changer. It stops the blame game. But it also leads to the third and probably scariest theme, ego dissolution.
Aka, the identity crisis.
A massive one. The text describes this as the tower moment, referencing the tarot card. It's when the structures of your life crumble. You might find that your job doesn't make sense anymore, your old friend groups feel shallow, and the way you used to date, maybe playing games or being the cool girl or the provider, it just stops working.
It creates a void, and humans hate voids. We like structure.
It reminds me of the lobster analogy. I read this somewhere. For a lobster to grow, it has to shed its shell, but right after it sheds the shell, it's soft, it's squishy, it's totally vulnerable to predators. That's what this phase feels like. You've lost the old armor, but you haven't grown the new one yet.
That is a perfect analogy. You are exposed. And because we feel so defenseless in that squishy state, we instinctively reach for something to save us, which is the fourth theme, the longing for union.
This is where the romance kicks back in again. We feel this gaping hole, this defenselessness, and we think, if I can just be with him or her, the pain will stop, we will be united, and I'll be safe.
But the source flips this on its head.
Yeah.
It argues that this longing is actually a case of mistaken identity. You are misinterpreting the signal. You are craving union, yes, but not with another person. You are craving a reunion with the parts of yourself you abandoned.
Wait, break that down. What parts did I abandon?
Well, think about it. To fit in, to be loved by our parents or society, we all chopped off parts of ourselves. Maybe you suppressed your anger or your creativity or your vulnerability. This twin flame person usually embodies the exact thing you suppressed.
Oh, interesting. So if I'm like a rigid rule follower, I might get obsessed with someone who is a total rebel.
Exactly. And you think you want them, but really, you just want your own freedom back. You're projecting your suppressed desire for liberation onto them. Psychologists call it the golden shadow. We fall in love with our own potential, which we see reflected in someone else.
That makes so much sense. It explains the obsession. You're trying to reabsorb a part of yourself. But we have to pause here. Because while this all sounds very therapeutic and noble, integration, growth, healing, there is a dark side. The skeptic in me is looking at this and thinking, this sounds like a recipe for staying in a really toxic relationship.
I'm so glad you brought that up, because the source material has a massive section dedicated to what they call the danger zone. And honestly, this is where most people get stuck.
Yeah, the biggest red flag for me was the way this concept can be used to justify abuse.
Yeah.
He screams at me and ghosts me, but it's just because the connection is so intense and he's triggering my growth.
That is the #1 pitfall. The source is explicitly clear. Abuse is not a spiritual lesson. If you are using the label twin flame to bypass the reality that someone is treating you poorly, you are in the danger zone.
It's called spiritual bypassing, right? Using spiritual words to avoid psychological reality.
That's the term. It's when you say, oh, he's running because his soul is overwhelmed by our love, instead of he's running because he's emotionally immature and not interested in a relationship. You replace the painful truth with a pretty fantasy, because the fantasy hurts less.
And the text also mentions the pain is sacred trap. I feel like we've been fed this lie by movies and books that if it hurts, it must be true love. If it's easy, it's boring.
The Romeo and Juliet effect. We equate suffering with depth. The source pushes back hard on this. It says, pain is not sacred, healing is sacred, growth is sacred. But suffering for the sake of suffering, that's just masochism with a spiritual glitter filter.
Masochism with a spiritual glitter filter. I am stealing that.
Yeah.
So if you're listening to this and you're in a situation that is constantly draining, constantly painful, and you're telling yourself it's a twin flame journey, just stop. That's not the vibe.
And I want to bring in the psychological angle here. Because what the spiritual community calls twin flame union looks a hell of a lot like what psychologists call limerence or a trauma bond.
Limerence, that's that obsessive intrusive thought pattern, right? Where you can't think about anything else.
Yes, it's an addiction to the uncertainty.
Yeah.
And a trauma bond is when you are glued to someone through a cycle of intermittent reinforcement. They treat you badly, then they give you a crumb of love, and your brain releases a flood of dopamine. It's biologically addictive, just like a slot machine.
So does the source say the twin flame experience is just a trauma bond? Is it debunking the whole thing?
Not exactly. It's more nuanced. It validates that the feeling is real, the spiritual opening is real, but it warns that your nervous system can't tell the difference between a soul connection and a trauma trigger. They feel the same. High heart rate, obsession, intensity. The source says, don't get hung up on the label. If it feels like a trauma bond, treat it like one. Set boundaries. Protect yourself. Don't just surrender to the universe.
That's the grounding we needed, because I think people get lost in the magic and forget the biology. Okay, so we've defined the collapse, we've looked at the mirror, and we've warned everyone about the red flags. Now let's talk solutions. The book offers a toolkit for integration. If I'm in the thick of this, feeling crazy, obsessed, and activated, what do I actually do?
The first tool is a cognitive pivot. You have to recenter on yourself.
This sounds simple, but it is the hardest thing to do when you're obsessed.
It is. The default mode when you're in this state is investigative reporter. You're stalking their social media, analyzing their Spotify playlists, asking their friends about them. You are an expert on them. The pivot is to become an expert on you.
So instead of asking, why did they post that sad song? I should be asking, what?
You ask, what is happening in my body right now that makes me feel I need to know? What fear is driving this checking behavior? You turn the camera around. You stop being the paparazzi for your twin flame and start being the director of your own movie.
I love that. Stop being the paparazzi. Okay, what's the second tool?
This one is a tough pill to swallow for the romantics. Release the destined person narrative.
But the whole point is that they're my destiny.
The source argues that your destiny is wholeness, not a specific husband or wife. It introduces the idea that some people are chapter people, not book people.
Oh, I really like that distinction.
Someone can enter your life, shake everything up, force you to grow, and then leave. And that doesn't mean you failed. It doesn't mean the connection wasn't real. It means they fulfilled their contract. They woke you up. Now you have to get out of bed and live your day.
That completely changes how you view a breakup. It stops being a tragedy and starts being like a graduation.
That's a great way to put it. And to actually survive that graduation, you need the third tool, which is foundational, nervous system regulation.
We hear this buzzword a lot, regulate your nervous system. But in this context, the author seems to think it's even more important than the spiritual stuff.
They do. They argue that you cannot integrate high-level spiritual insights if your body is in fight or flight mode. Think about it. If you are physically shaking with anxiety, can you really have a higher self-realization? No. You're in survival mode. Your brain is scanning for tigers, not enlightenment.
So practically, are we just talking about sitting in lotus pose?
Actually, meditation can be really hard when you're that activated. Sitting still can just make the anxiety louder. The source suggests somatic practices, things that involve the body. Breath work is huge, specifically to downregulate anxiety. Hold exposure like a cold shower, heavy lifting, dancing, shaking your limbs, anything that proves to your body, I am here and I am safe. You have to build a container that is strong enough to hold these intense emotions.
You can't pour boiling water into a paper cup. You need a ceramic mug. Your body is the mug.
Precisely. If you don't strengthen the body, the spiritual energy just fries your circuits. That's why people feel like they're going crazy. Their hardware can't handle the software update.
Okay, so we're focusing on ourselves, we're accepting they might be a chapter person, and we're breathing through the panic to build our ceramic mug. This leads to the final shift in the toolkit, redefining the goal.
Right. The goal shifts from union with them to integration with self.
We touched on this earlier, but let's make it the key takeaway. What does a person look like who has achieved integration?
They look solid. A person in integration isn't frantically searching for their other half. They have accepted their own dark side and their own light side. They trust their own intuition. They have boundaries.
They aren't hungry anymore.
Yes. They might still want a relationship. Relationships are beautiful, but they aren't starving for one to prove they exist. the desperation is gone. And ironically, the source says that this state of inner wholeness is actually the only place from which a healthy relationship can form.
The irony. You have to stop needing them to actually be able to have them, or anyone else, in a healthy way.
It's the paradox of love. Two halves don't make a whole. They make a codependent mess. Two wholes make a partnership.
That's a bumper sticker right there. Two halves make a mess. So, to wrap this up, if you are out there feeling the twin flame burn, if you feel like you've met your soul's other half and it's just ripping you apart,
Take a breath. Validate the intensity. It's real. But recognize that the intensity is a call to action for you, not a treasure map to them.
it's a software update, it's a mirror, it's a chance to stop abandoning yourself.
And remember the core message of the book. You are not incomplete. You're not waiting for someone to bring you the missing piece of your soul. You are the whole puzzle. You just forgot where you put some of the pieces.
I think that's the perfect place to leave it. But we always like to leave you with a final thought to chew on as you go about your day.
Here's something to consider. If you stopped chasing the idea of destiny, if you stopped looking for the universe to write your love story, and you started writing it yourself, by treating yourself with the same love you are demanding from them,
Yeah.
is that act of self-care actually the union you were looking for all along?
Something to think about. Thanks for diving deep with us.